Welcome back, 365 Sports. If you guys don't know who this is Jack MacKenzie, host of the College Chaos podcast on Chris Ball College Football. He and Garrett host this podcast together. And Jack today, when he opened his phone at 10:45 a.m. after waking up, because he's a young man and can wait till...
I was working at 8 a.m.
Sure, I don't believe you. Whatever. Yeah.
I was publishing articles on SicEm365.com.
You could have AI do that. I'm just saying. You could say it. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know.
I wish.
I wouldn't know. But Jack sent me a list of questions, and he said, do you think this would be a segment? I said, yeah, let's go ahead and do it. About ACC realignment, Jack, because you were thoroughly confused.
I am still thoroughly confused.
Okay.
I started off then, and I'll start off now with, how does this help the ACC? How do these three schools help the ACC?
On the field, like as far as television ratings and all that, probably not, especially immediately, unless all three are good. I actually think SMU could kind of slide right into the middle of the pack of the ACC most years, but they're well behind the top teams, and they know that. I mean, I'm not saying anything that SMU doesn't know. They haven't had this juice to recruit with ever, but I think they could probably step in and do fairly well. Just because of what they've been trying to do the last couple of years. I think they'd be ahead of Boston College right now. I think they'd be ahead of a couple others, but as far as on the field, no. How it helps the ACC right now is their deal states that if they stay above 15 teams or above, then nothing changes from ESPN. And this protects against them losing the three teams I think they feel that they're going to lose. So they at least... it doesn't trigger a renegotiation with ESPN and make them scramble. Now, if 4 teams leave, which I'm sure was going to be your next question, then that creates a different problem in that now they'll have to find somebody else. But it's not like, especially given the fact you heard Jim Williams just then talk about, look, they'll have a bunch of money in the war chest that all these teams will owe them. And it's not like they wouldn't wake up in the morning and be like, you've got 6 hours to get somebody to join the conference, go. It wouldn't be like that. So I think they'd have time to call USF, UConn, whoever they wanted to and say, hey, you guys, you ready? You're in. Let's go.
How is this not just like an admission of defeat to those three schools, though? Like just being like, yeah, you guys are going to leave before the contract's up. We know.
I don't think it's an admission of defeat. I think it's just saying like, you guys are going to do what you're going to do, and we have to be prepared to move on without you. So, and maybe it's an admission of defeat, but they're still in a good spot because they're still going to get paid. Because I think they have to operate on, look, Florida State's made their position very clear. And Clemson and North Carolina voting the way they did have made their position very clear in that we're not interested in what's going to help the rest of you out. We're interested in what's going to help us out. And what those schools are interested in, and they're like, fine, yes, thank you. We'll take $6 million more. I'm not going to say no to it. But we want $30 million more. So getting us 20% of the way there isn't blowing our skirt up, so to speak.
I'm just wondering how much they're really getting them there. Like, I remember from a Big 12 perspective, Brett Yormark was always harping on they need to be additive, not dilutive. I'm still struggling to see how these three, and possibly a fourth in the future that could be UConn or Memphis, would truly be additive and not dilutive.
Well, and that's a very good point because right now it's additive in that they have a clause in their contract that says they get this money, and then the three schools have said, we're not even going to take most of that money or any of it if you're SMU.
That's the thing.
And give it to you. So right now it's additive in that perspective. But when the contract comes back around, which is a long time from now, it might turn around and be dilutive. So it's additive today. It's probably dilutive in the future.
Which just leads me back to why. Like, you've got to be making these moves for the future, not just the short-term future, the long-term future, because it seems like no matter what, that short-term future includes Florida State, Clemson, and UNC leaving.
So, look, for Cal and Stanford, there was no real short-term future, so they kind of had to do this.
I understand why they wanted in.
For the ACC, I think they think that they have a long-term future with FSU and Clemson because of the grant of rights and how impenetrable it might be. But I do think that they are guarding against the fact that right now, there's a lot of like schools just going Leroy Jenkins, and that's what that FSU and Clemson are going to do is just run out and do exactly what they want to do and worry about the money on the back end. So if that happens, then all the legal documents in the world, they could be like, but this paper says this, and they're like, yeah, it does, but here's the check, and we're going to figure out on our own because we have a place to go now, and we'll figure out the rest of it. Because look, if if Cal and Stanford and SMU are willing to take no money or less money, then Florida State and Clemson might be able to figure that out to get in another league for the same amount of time. So, I mean, that might be the new thing is like, we'll forego all this money because we'll figure out a way to make it on the back end, private equity and whatnot. But it's all theoretical.
Yeah, I have so many doubts about that. And I guess my last real question here, I know we're running a little short on time, is just how does this not move college football further down the road of decoupling from the other sports? Because the geographic distance is crazy. Football is the only sport that's really making the money. Basketball makes a little, and the ACC has historically been a strong basketball conference. But how does this not take you down that road?
I don't think it. Yeah, it does. I mean, eventually, and look, I'm an advocate, and I think it should have been for a long time because you have to start treating things as they are and not how you think they should be. And you can, as long as you treat something as it is, you can maybe make it the way you think it should be. But if you're not treating it in a realistic fashion, then you can never really change it, right? So if you're saying, well, football is the same as softball, like softball is begging you to be like, no, it's not. Like we maybe need you to take this out because look, and I get that like cutting off in the middle of the country and like letting Cal and Stanford fly to Dallas is going to be a little bit better and vice versa on the other side. But it's still, that's a crap load of flights to Dallas. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're going to play, you're really going, anytime that those teams play, anybody from the West Coast and East Coast meet in anything. It's not any time, but like
you're spending half your season in Dallas. If you're those two schools,
you're spending half the year in Dallas. If you're you're spending half your year in Dallas for your Cal and Stanford, and then everybody else is going to Dallas a lot more than they normally would. So yeah, it's going to be a point where you're like, man, I am super sick of DF or Love Field or DFW. Like it's just going to be one of those deals. So yeah, they've got to figure that out. Jack, thank you so much. I think
Thanks for having me on.
Are the avatar for most people when it comes to why does this make
Don't put that pressure on me.
sense? Well, I mean, you're here. Yeah, you're the avatar.
I guess I am here.
You're the avatar. When